Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's John Campea, and this is a companion video. And every day on the John Campea Show and on Open Mic in the afternoons, we take live questions from the audience. Quite often, though, we don't have time to get to all of the live questions, so we take all those live questions that we didn't get a chance to do on those shows live, and we bring them over here to make sure they get answered, and we do that here on the companion video. So, without wasting any time, let's jump in to the first question we gotta get caught up with today, and that's coming us from Odile Jones, who writes, if Disney/Fox goes, will X-Men/Fantastic Four be in Infinity War 2 post-credits? Okay, so this is a kind of question, this is actually getting asked a lot these days. So, as you know, there's a bit of a bidding war going on right now between Comcast and Disney, both trying to get their hands on Fox. Right now, as of the time of this recording, Disney has the high bid at like $71.3 billion. The Fox shareholders are scheduled to vote, I believe, on July 27th. That gives Comcast still a few more weeks to mount a counterbid if they want to. If they don't, the bidding war will go to Disney, but that doesn't mean that it'll get final government approval. Now, some of you might be saying, but John, I heard the government already gave approval. No. One department already gave preliminary approval, but it's only preliminary and it's provisional approval. There's still a number of other hurdles it needs to go through. I think with the ruling in the AT&T purchasing Time Warner case that went through, I think that means that regardless who wins, Disney or Comcast, I have a feeling either one of them will probably get through and pass through government approval without too much trouble. But again, it's not done yet, so there's still a long way to go. So a lot of people are wondering, okay, if Disney wins this bidding war, and if it gets all the government approval, that it looks like it may, could we see X-Men or Fantastic Four, Deadpool, whatever, in a post-credit scene in Avengers 4? Or as some people are calling it, Infinity War 2, whatever. It's going to be something else. But will they be there? Look, I don't know the answer, but it seems to me that the answer is pretty clearly no, they wouldn't. Because right now, all the evidence points towards that they won't. Look, they're pretty much finished shooting the film, right? They're in the final stages of shooting the film now. Kevin Feige, who has no reason to lie, like there's absolutely no upside or downside to him lying. Kevin Feige has said he has not given 1 ounce of thought to X-Men or to Fantastic Four or any of that kind of stuff, and he won't until he hears that everything is signed, sealed, delivered, and final. And we're still, even if Disney wins the bidding war, we're still probably a year away from everything becoming final. Avengers 4 will probably hit theaters before everything is finalized. So we may hear tomorrow that, or on July 27th, we may hear that the Fox shareholders have approved the bid of Disney. Okay, that ends part 1. But there's still a long series of stages that still need to go through to clear all the hurdles that they told us 6 months ago will probably take about a year and a half. Whereas we're at right now, probably about another year. There is a good chance that Avengers 4 is going to be in theater before the final bit of approvals go through. Understanding that, and understand there's going to be a very close eye being kept on Disney and Fox to make sure there's no collusion undermining the open system. Because what would happen is if, like, say, sometime in August or something, reports come out that Fantastic Four, some new casts have been cast for Fantastic Four, and they're going to be in post-credit scenes in Avengers 4. Comcast is going to sue. They're going to say, there's been collusion. There's been an unfair playing field. There's supposed to be an open, fair market on this. There's been an unfair playing field. There's been collusion. This is antitrust, blah, 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 blah. And it could derail the entire Disney purchase of Fox. Disney are not stupid. They are not going to endanger the legal standing that they have, and they're not going to endanger this process and this purchase if they even win the bidding war. But they're not going to endanger it for what? To throw in a cameo in a post-credit scene? They're really going to risk all that just to put in some stupid little post-credit scene cameo? And by the way, from a creative point of view, that would so you're going to rush casting these characters? You're not going to take your time and make sure you personally and perfectly, if you're Kevin Feige, personally and perfectly make sure you cast the right people to be new Fantastic Four, to be new X-Men. You're not going to take your time for that? You're not going to wait till you have a script and ideas for new movies, and instead you're just going to go, let's just cast whoever, we'll put them in as cameos and completely ruin ourselves? There just seems to be no reason to do it. And that's the biggest thing to me. There simply seems to be no reason to rush this and force in and shoehorn in a Fantastic Four X-Men cameo of some sort in the Avengers 4 post-credits. There doesn't seem to be any upside. There's no upside to it. You couldn't market it, so it's not like going to increase your box office. You'd be rushing casting. You're risking the legal standing of your purchase of Fox. All an ocean of downside and no upside. So I just, look, anything is possible. I'm not sitting here and saying, ironclad guarantee this will not happen. I can't say that because that would be preposterous. Of course you can't. But I just don't see any reason why Disney would be so idiotic as to do something that has almost zero upside and has oceans of potential downside. I just don't see why you would do something that stupid. So I would be shocked. It's possible, but I would be completely shocked if they did something that reckless, that irresponsible, and that stupid. To risk their entire purchase of Fox, to risk massive lawsuits, to risk forcing in casting that you're not really ready to do for movie scripts and parts that aren't even written yet. There just seems to be no reason to do it. So I'm going to go out and say no. I don't think that's something that they're going to do. All right, let's move on to the next one. And the next one comes to us from Sid Vicious, who writes, thoughts on the 13th Warrior with Antonio Banderas. It was a bold movie that cast a Muslim character as the lead in a $200 million Hollywood movie. Sadly, it bombed. Not sadly to me. I thought it was a terrible movie. I remember when it came out because Antonio Banderas was hot at the time, and I'm an Antonio Banderas fan. No, Antonio, too sexy, too sexy. Kudos to you if you understand that reference. I'm a big Antonio Banderas fan, and I was looking forward to that movie. The mythology behind it looked really cool. I gotta tell you, I thought it was a snore fest of a movie, and a lot of my friends liked it. A lot of my friends actually quite liked it. But I thought it was just a bad movie. Did they do some bold things in it, especially at the time? Absolutely they did, but that doesn't make it a good movie. It's good to do bold things, it's good to do daring things, but it all is only really worth it if you still make it a good movie, and to me, 13th Warrior wasn't a good movie. Now, I know a lot of you will disagree, because a lot of my friends disagree, and that's totally fine. That's the subjectivity of film. But, I thought it was a sluggish movie, that its narrative was not connected well. It played pretty fast and loose with consistency. I just didn't like the film all that much. Now, granted, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I just remember it's one of the first times that I had a real disagreement with one of my buddies over a movie, because we usually had the same taste in movies. My buddy really liked it, and I was like, I thought it was trash. I thought it was terrible. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. DC Patience writes, AT&T just increased admin fees and prices of DirecTV Now after their merger got approved. What are the other mergers we should be watching besides Disney? Honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't keep an eye too closely. I mean, any more than the average person on big corporate mergers and takeovers and stuff like that. I can't think of any on the horizon. Like, Sony's not for sale. They're under a new CEO who has no interest in selling their movie division. Paramount's not for sale. I mean, none of these other things. It's funny because I get a lot of questions saying, well, why doesn't Disney buy Sony then? Because Sony's not for sale. They're under new leadership who has no interest in selling off the movie division. Their new CEO loves the movie division, no interest in selling it. Paramount's the same, blah, blah, blah. You can't go after and try to buy something that's not for sale. So there's that. So I'm not aware off the top of my head of any other significant mergers going on in the entertainment world right now. But then again, I'm the wrong person to ask because I don't really keep my ear to the ground on that stuff too much. All right. Next one comes to us from Odile Jones, who writes, is the Haunted Mansion reboot still happening? You know what? Somebody else asked that question a while ago, and I have heard nothing. I honestly don't think it's happening anymore. Not because I've been told it's not happening anymore, but it's been such quiet, dead air surrounding this project for so long that I just have to be left with the opinion that it's not happening anymore. Let me just look up one thing here. Haunted Generation. Let me see. The last real bit of news. Actually, the last thing I heard is that it was scrapped. The last thing I did hear was that it was scrapped, and that there was some talk about some filmmakers, maybe even a Guillermo del Toro, restarting the process on getting a Haunted Mansion back. But I guess the last thing that came out is that the project they were working on is a no-go. They first announced that they were doing it, I think, at Comic-Con, like back in 2011, 2012, something like that. But as far as I know, I've seen nothing, no signs of life. So if I don't hear any breathing and I don't have any heartbeat, I'm going to pronounce it dead on arrival. I think it may be dead. But again, I have not heard that definitively, but I got to believe it's probably dead at this point. Jason Than Sasithasan writes, Happy Canada Day, John. Obviously, this came in the other day. From Toronto. I love Toronto. Do you think Solo would have been more profitable if the director didn't change? No reshoot stuff? Well, I mean, obviously. Obviously. Yes, because, like, first of all, the original shooting budget for the movie was $150 million. So, hold on a second. The original shooting budget for the standalone Solo movie, let's see, where is it? Was, I believe, $150 million. Right now, the film has made $371 million. All right? So, with let's go with a little bit of a higher. Let's go with $100 million budget. There's for a marketing budget and everything. There's 250 minus about a third for theaters take, because that's roughly what we do in our equation, about a third. You're taking away about $90 million. You're talking about Solo, you're talking about at 370, if the movie budget had been $150 million, and it wasn't anymore after all the reshoots, you're talking about a movie that right now would already be profitable. Solo, a Star Wars story, even at just $371 million, would be profitable right now. Adding $100 million for marketing, deducting 1/3 for theater costs, you're still talking about a movie that's probably $10, $20, $25 million in the profit at this point. However, it did have the reshoot drama. Some people say the final budget came in around 250. I heard it was actually closer to 300 million. So now you're talking about 300 million for production, another 100 million for marketing. Now you're talking about a $400 million price tag. You got 371 million minus 90 million, 90 minus 85 million for 1/3 for the box office. Yeah, now you're talking about a film that's lost like $100 and something million. Had they not done the reshoots, you're talking about a movie that made 10, 20, 25 million bucks. That's nothing to get too excited about, but hey, at least it was profitable. But it did have reshoots, and it did go way over budget, and this movie has lost money. So yeah, the difference here is you're talking about a movie that would have been profitable to a movie that's going to lose in the neighborhood of $100 million. $100 million it's going to lose. Wrap your head around that. So yeah, dude, there's massive difference. It's the difference between being profitable and being in a big hole. And it's in a big hole, make no mistake about it. Solo is a big money loser. It has lost the studio a lot of money. And it would have been modestly profitable by this much. But at least it's profitable. At least you're not losing money. You count that as a win, but it's not a win. With all the reshoots, probably cost them close to $300 million to make this sucker. And you're talking about a movie that has lost them over $100 million. So huge difference, man. All right, next one comes to us from Ethan's Tech World, who writes, can you make a review of AMC A-List with your experiences, what you really like, and what you would change to improve it? Thanks, love the show. And I'm going to do it. Here's the thing, though. I need people to stop sending me suggestions. Hear me out on this. I'm getting a lot of people emailing me suggestions about what AMC needs to do to make AMC A-List even better. However, what you cannot do, let me restart that. Most, if not all, the suggestions I'm getting about all the other free things AMC should include. That's a non-starter. Because anybody can come up with a great program if you start throwing everything in for free. Well, of course, adding in more free things makes it better. Sure, for you, for me. But it makes it unsustainable for AMC. What I need to hear from people is your ideas and suggestions to make the service even better that does not worsen AMC's position and threatens taking AMC A-List from being something that is sustainable, which what we as film fans need it to be sustainable, to being a money-losing venture for AMC, because that's not going to help them and it's not going to help us in the long run. So if you send me ideas about how AMC A-List can improve, make sure that they're ideas that ensure that the AMC A-List program is sustainable and is financially viable. Don't just keep throwing in, because I had one guy write to me and say, and oh, God bless him, his heart was in the right place, but this one guy write to me, AMC should also include you get a free popcorn and free soda every time you go to the movie with A-List. But that's like a $15 thing every time you go to the movies. Yes, but don't you think that would be good for the consumer? Yes, but it will put AMC out of business, and that is bad for the consumer. So no, that's not a good idea. Anybody can come up with ideas about add in more free stuff to make it better. Great, but I need suggestions. I want to hear ideas and suggestions from you guys to how AMC can improve their service that does not threaten its sustainability at the same time. So we got to keep that in mind. So yes, I am going to do a review of it, and I will make some suggestions as to what I think they could do to improve it. But it's just so you're aware, it's not going to be throw in free this and throw in free that, because that takes away from its sustainability. So I will do that, and it's going to come up this week. So keep your eyes open for that. I will do that this week. Mr. Film writes, Mr. Film writes, we talk film, but shout out to my country, Colombia. Mr. Film follows it up. We are in the World Cup, playing great. You must watch. Are they still in there? Hold a second. World Cup. Are they the ones that just beat Japan? Let's see. Colombia beat Poland. Then they beat Senegal. Oh, and then they lost to England. They lost to England in extra time. So I'm gonna guess that you sent me that. I'm gonna guess that you sent me that message just before they lost to England. But hey, Italy didn't get in. That's the reason why I haven't really been watching the World Cup this year, is because Italy didn't get in. So yeah, you guys lost to England, but you got further than Italy did. So your team was already way ahead of mine. So there you go. James Welsh writes, when you mention top 5 villains, you never bring up Kingpin. To me, he's easily in there and up with the best of the cinematic villains. Well, okay, there's 2 different ways to look at that. First of all, Kingpin, who's in the Daredevil series, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, so good. Nobody's going to disagree that that's a great character. Of course that's a great character. And he's played brilliantly, yes. So there's one way of looking at it from that perspective. The other thing, though, is this. Can you compare him to the cinematic villains? Daredevil's not a movie. But he's in the MCU. But is he in the MCU? We've been talking a lot lately about how more and more the Netflix series completely ignore the MCU. They completely ignore the MCU, with the rare exception of the odd, vague reference to the incident, or something like that. For all practical intents and purposes, they completely ignore the MCU. Iron Man never shows up on Luke Cage, or vice versa. That's never happened. There's a reason you never see any of the Netflix characters in the movies and stuff like that. So can you really say, or can we even compare, because he's not in the MCU? For all intents and purposes and on every practical level, this Kingpin character, who is fantastic, is not really in the MCU. There's a technical way to make it out that he's in the MCU, but for all real practical purposes, he's not in the MCU. So that's why when we talk about top 5 Marvel villains and stuff like that, the reason Kingpin doesn't come up is not because Kingpin's not a great character, particularly the Kingpin in the Daredevil series. Obviously, he's a great character. But we don't talk about him because when talking about the top cinematic Marvel villains, because he's not a Marvel cinematic villain. But okay, let's just for a second, let's for argument's sake, save for a moment, and let's go with, for now, for our purposes right now, let's say that the Daredevil Netflix show is part of the MCU, and Daredevil he qualifies, or I should say Kingpin qualifies to be in the discussion for top 5 villains. Does he get in the top 5 villain list? I'll say yes. Yes, he does. Now, over him would be, I believe, Thanos. Over him would be Killmonger. Over him, I think, would be Loki. Over him, well, now you got 2 spots left for 3 villains. 2 spots left for 3 villains. And those villains would be Michael Keaton's Vulture, D'Onofrio's Kingpin, and Cate Blanchett's Hela. And maybe you should also probably throw in there, I always forget the actor's name, Agent Smith and Red Skull. And I always kick myself whenever Hugh something. Anyway, so Red Skull. I think there's an argument to be made there that Kingpin comes in the top 5. Yeah, I think there's an argument to be made there. He probably bumps out Red Skull, probably bumps out Hela, and you're probably looking at a top 5 that includes Michael Keaton's Vulture, D'Onofrio's Kingpin, Killmonger, Loki, Thanos, in no particular order. That's what you're probably looking at, although I could swap out Hela for Vulture or something. But anyway, does Kingpin get in there if you make the assumption that that he qualifies to be in the discussion? I say there's an argument that, yeah, he can be in that top 5. But again, what it comes down to for me is that for all intents and practical purposes, Kingpin's not in the MCU. Thus, when we talk about the top 5 MCU villains, Kingpin's not a part of the discussion, not because he's not a worthy inclusion to the discussion, but simply because, then we might as well talk about Heath Ledger's Joker. Neither of them are really in the MCU, so no discussion to be had there. But that's just the way I look at it. Maybe you look at it a little bit differently. So bottom line, he's not in the top 5 because he's not an MCU villain. If you wanted to say for the purposes of our argument that he is an MCU villain, then yes, I would say he would be in the top 5. What do you guys think? Jump down in the comments section. Let me know your thoughts on that. Okay, next up is Ben Hayusa, who writes, have you seen the 1987 Shane Black written film, The Monster Squad? Yes, I have. It's like Goonies with classic monsters like Dracula, Wolfman, and Frankenstein. Yeah, and it's directed by a dude, I want to make sure I get it, I believe it's Frank Decker. Or Decker, one of the two. It's directed by a guy named Frank Decker, who also co-wrote that with Shane Black. Frank Decker also directed RoboCop 3. Let's forget about that one. He also wrote RoboCop 3. So guys, you gotta check my phone, because as you guys know, my mom is in the hospital. She's doing well, but I just like to keep my eye on this stuff. Okay, hold on a second. There we go. All right, so where were we? Oh yeah, so Frank Decker co-wrote that movie with him. He also directed RoboCop 3. Now, Frank Decker hasn't done a lot in the last 10, 15 years. He hasn't done a lot. But when you look under the credits of Shane Black's new movie, Predator, that's coming out, look at who one of the writers is. Our buddy Frank Decker's back, working with his buddy Shane Black, right? So he's back working on that again. So that's an interesting little thing to keep in mind there. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Okay, the Comics Boss writes, hey, John, just wanted to second the Danny Phantom recommendation. I keep having people tell me I need to watch the Danny Phantom show and watch the intro thing. Creator Butch Harmon also did Fairly Odd Parents, but Danny P might be his best work. Okay, thanks for the recommendation, man. I love it when people send in the stuff, because even if I don't get a chance to go around and watch it, I've had other people write to me and say, John, I watched X show because somebody on your show recommended it, so I checked it out. So even if I don't get a chance to get around and watching it, you are influencing other fans to check it out as well. So that's why I love when you guys send in those recommendations. All right, Dedius writes, where is the Blu-ray for the best movie ever made, True Lies? Well, it's not the best movie ever made, but to me, it is my all-time favorite action film. True Lies, I've always said this, is my all-time favorite action film. I love that movie. Love it, love it, love it. No Blu-ray. And James Cameron has been talking about that for a while. Actually, back in 2017, last year, James Cameron was being interviewed, and he said he has plans to get a True Lies and a, what's the name of that? Abyss. He has plans to get, because there's no Blu-ray for the Abyss either, which is just mind-boggling to me. But he's got plans to do Blu-rays for the Abyss and for True Lies. It's a year later, still haven't heard anything. Now, he's kind of busy working on not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 Avatar sequels. So he's a little bit busy at the moment doing crap like that. So it might still be a while, but yeah, man. I mean, look, it doesn't really matter to me all that much because I don't buy Blu-rays. I have been a digital streamer for a long time. I buy all my movies digitally online. My service of choice is the Google Play Store, but I also buy movies on Amazon now and again and things like that. But I stream my movies. That's where I like having them. I like having them in the cloud. I just like doing it that way. So it doesn't really affect me too awful much. But it is ridiculous to me that the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest action film of all time, True Lies, is not on Blu-ray right now. And it is crazy to me that The Abyss isn't on Blu-ray right now. It's also kind of nuts. All right. Peter Tennant writes, hey, John, I have a question. All right, I'll see if I have an answer. Have you seen Batman Mask of the Phantasm? Absolutely, I have. The only animated superhero movie to be shown in theaters. I love it and think it's better than every other Batman movie. Oh, I'll disagree with you on that. Absolutely, I'll disagree with you on that. But it is good. It's one of the very, very few animated superhero movies that's Marvel or DC that I actually like. I'll be honest with you. I think most Marvel and most DC's animated stuff is junk. I really do. And everybody gets all excited about it, but I try to watch. And there are exceptions. There are exceptions. I mean, obviously, Dark Knight, that came out a couple of years ago, which was an animated rendition of the graphic novel, one of the greatest graphic novel series of all time. That was pretty damn good. On the Marvel side, I thought the Doctor Strange animated movie on the Marvel side was actually pretty damn good too. So there are definitely exceptions for sure. Batman Mask of the Phantasm is absolutely one of those exceptions. I remember I went to go see that in theater. I was young, but I remember I went to go see that in theaters. I did. It's a solid movie. Is it as good as, I don't think it's as good as Batman versus Superman. I don't think it's as good as The Dark Knight. I don't think it's as good as Batman Begins. But all film is subjective. To you, it's the best Batman movie ever. And that's cool. I disagree, but your opinion is no less valid than mine. But I'll agree with you that, yeah, it's a good one. And it's rare for me to say that any DC or Marvel animated film is any good. But yeah, that's definitely one of them. That is included on my list of exceptions. For sure it is. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay. Ben Hayusa writes, John, just letting you know, I was never a fan of Star Wars. But thanks to you and some fans, I started to take my time to watch almost every movie. My favorite ones are Return of the Jedi, Force Awakens, and Solo. Well, that's awesome, man. I love that you started getting into it. And like, whether it's Star Wars or old classics or thrillers or comedies, whatever, the best thing I love hearing is when people say, I had never seen this movie, and because of all the community here talking, I started to watch this movie, and now I love that movie. I love hearing that. That's great. Whenever film fans can encourage other film fans to check out other great film, that's great. And I love that you love those films, man. Return of the Jedi is obviously my all-time favorite Star Wars movie. I think it's one of the greatest ever. Absolutely the best Star Wars movie ever made, in my opinion. Most people are Empire Strikes Back, and I won't argue with that. But to me, it's Return of the Jedi. I love The Force Awakens. Really enjoyed Solo, so I'm glad you enjoyed those ones too, man. I'm glad you're on the Star Wars train. All right. Chris Warden writes, just saw Upgrade yesterday and loved it, but I didn't realize that the lead actor in it wasn't Tom Hardy until the film. And I tell you what, I remember I had to watch, the first time I saw the trailer, I was like, I never even heard that Tom Hardy was in this. I swear to God, the first time I saw the trailer, like, I didn't realize I never even heard of this Tom Hardy movie. And it wasn't until near the end of the trailer that I realized it wasn't Tom Hardy. Because at least the shots they used in the trailer, my God, they certainly do a pretty good job kind of making you think for a second that this was a Tom Hardy movie and Tom Hardy may be in this movie. So they get you on that for a little bit, right? So, yeah, I was with you on that. It is a little bit of a surprise when you realize it's not him. All right. Lee Mallinson writes, unlikely scenario, but it's Italy versus Canada in the 2026 World Cup final at the Rose Bowl. Tickets are $1,200. Do you attend, and who are you rooting for? Well, here's the thing. The thing about that is, I am not a big enough soccer fan. Even if it was Italy versus Canada, I would be watching it with great interest, but I am not a big enough fan of soccer to shell out $1,200. I would shell out $1,200 to see the Toronto Maple Leafs play in a Stanley Cup final game. I'd shell out 12. I'd probably, you know what? I'd probably pay upwards of $3,000. I would probably pay $3,000. No more than that, but I would pay $3,000 to go see a Toronto Maple Leafs in the Stanley Cup final. That I would do. But soccer, I just probably wouldn't. Like I said, I'm only interested in soccer enough that I just watch the World Cup, and only if Italy's in it. And I probably would if Canada or the US were in it as well, but neither of those teams made it either. So none of Canada, US, or Italy made the World Cup. So I had very, very little interest in it. So no, I simply don't have enough interest in soccer to pay $1,200 to go see a game, even if it was Canada versus Italy. Now, if I'm watching that game at home, I'm cheering for Canada. My DNA is Italian. My heritage is Italian, but I was born in Canada. I am Canadian. My family's Italian, and I have a very great sense of pride in Italian heritage, but I am Canadian. So if the only team I would cheer over Italy in the World Cup is Canada. So if the two of them were playing in the World Cup final, I would cheer for Canada. That's where I'd be. All right. Final question today comes to us from Josh DeRose, who writes, congrats to the 2019 Stanley Cup champions, the Leafs. I don't think they're there yet. I don't think they're there. Like, they obviously just got the best free agent on the market this year, which is great. I can't believe they got him. I honestly thought he was going to go back to the Islanders. But I didn't realize he was such a lifelong Maple Leafs fan. So he goes to Toronto Maple Leafs. That's great. With Matthews and all the other nice pieces they've got in place there. And the fact that they just had one of their best seasons in forever. The future looks bright. The future looks good. This is the first time in a long time as a Maple Leafs fan, like ever since the Matt Sundin days, that I've been able to sit back and go, hey, there could be the future looks good. Like I remember when the Leafs got Matt Sundin. I'm like, dude, the future looks good. It looks good. I haven't felt like that till now. I feel like the future looks good. I do not think they're getting to the finals this year. I don't think this is the year, but another 2 or 3 years, if they keep that core together, are able to pick up 1 or 2 more pieces, develop, let Matthews develop a little bit more, you could have a real winner of a team, and I could be very, very happy. All right, guys, that will do it for now. There are, for some of you who've been waiting for a question to get answered on the companion video, like, wait a minute, my question wasn't there. There are more questions left over. Don't worry, we're going to do another installment of the companion video tomorrow on Sunday, so that'll be there, so we're going to catch up on that too. I just had a few people writing to me and saying, John, we'd love it if the companion videos were a little bit shorter. It's a little daunting when they're an hour and 15 minutes long. Can you make them a little bit shorter? So I said, okay, so I had enough questions here to break it up into a couple of pieces, so we're going to try them, keep them around a half hour right now. So we're going to do this one right now. Next one will come out tomorrow. Keep your eyes open for that. All right, guys, that will do it for me for now for this installment of companion videos. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.